Good afternoon. I have the lovely Charles with me. Hello, Charles. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Donna. Yes, I'm Charles Harris. I'm primarily an author. My background was in film. I started off in fact, as a theatre director. I started off at the age of 9 running a theatre, which was actually a shelf in my grandmother's front room. The actors were kind of cardboard, but the audience was extraordinarily enthusiastic. And then moved on to doing writing, basically anything I could get away with at school. I learned that if you can write entertaining, fun, silly stuff, you can get out of doing all sorts of serious work. And basically that's been the rule for the rest of my life. I worked my way through the film industry. I made all kinds of different films, and now three novels.
Wow. And there's a new one, which is what you're here to talk about. So, do you want to
Yeah.
introduce that to us?
Play Me. I have a copy here, which is now out in ebook, hardback, and paperback. It's a comedy crime. And the idea started many, many years ago, longer ago than I'd like to think, back in the early 1990s when I was listening to radio and the program it was a news program, and they were talking about the Ethiopian famine, which was a big thing at the time. In fact, led to Band-Aid and all of that stuff. And um, they said it's interesting that Ethiopia, which was, as I say, where people were starving, you could walk into a local supermarket and you could buy lentils that had been grown there and flown over. And you could get mangoes that had been grown in Sudan, also starving. And I thought this is weird. And when I started to dig further, I learned there's basically a deal, a kind of rather shady deal that we do in the West with poor countries, where we say, we'll lend you loads and loads of money to develop your infrastructure and buy important things like Sony Xboxes, and in return, you can grow food for us. But when they grow the food, in order to try and pay off their debt, we pay them as little as we possibly can, of course, and they stay in debt. It's a major cause of world starvation and world debt. And I thought this is a dreadful but interesting story. So I started to develop. Actually, it was a theatre play, and it was kind of rather avant-garde and silly, with people running around spinning plates, doing all sorts of things, and tricycles and stuff, trick cyclists and magicians, and it didn't really add up to much, but it needed research because I'd never been to any of these, developing countries. So I I thought, well, I better get someone to try and pay for me to do the research. And at the same time, BBC Two were looking for programs about the environment, particularly anything leading up to, at that time, was the first major summit, the Rio Summit. And I pitched this idea, and Alan Yentop, who was then head of BBC Two, said, likes the idea, but he doesn't want anything that's worthy but dull. So, roughly the same time, I was watching a BBC documentary that happened, which was done as a satire. It was basically it was about the financial dealings in the city and how all sorts of shady things that go on legally. And it was fronted by a guy who said he was an East End gangster. I mean, he probably wasn't. He was just sort of playing the part. But I thought that's an idea. We confront this thing. We can do this as a satire. And at that time, Alexei Sayle was doing great stuff on television. So we hired him, and he fronted this documentary, which we ended up filming in the Dominican Republic,
Oh,
which was a fascinating place, and at the same time very poor and very rich. I mean, it's a very rich culture. They have food there, but no one can afford to buy it because no one's got a job, or those jobs they have got don't pay enough because of all the basically back to the debt and the deals and all the stuff that's going on. And the farmers are growing food can't afford to sell it to their own people. So this became the basis of what was to become Play Me. But at the time, the story didn't really work. There was no real story. It was lots of ideas, but no real story. So I put it away for about, well, over 20 years. And I'd done my first two novels, the first of which was a satire based on a tabloid newspaper industry called The Breaking of Liam Glass. And I wanted to work out what to do as a third novel. And I thought, actually, maybe this idea, I can make it work. So I dug it out. And what it needed, firstly, it needed a central character. And this guy came to me, a guy called Axeman Flynn, a kind of one and a half hit wonder British rock star who's been living off his one and a half hits for years and years and years, and is desperate to try and revive his career. And he gets an email from someone in this country which he called Bencuda, which is a kind of fictional island somewhere in the Caribbean, from a guy who he thinks is another singer. In fact, he's actually a gangster. And he's invited to front this charity concert in the Caribbean, rather like Bob Marley did his peace concert. So he thinks this is going to be his chance to be Bob Marley. He doesn't realize the whole thing's a scam. And he flies over. And virtually the first thing that happens to him is he walks into the office of the president of the island and witnesses him being assassinated by one of the other gangsters, and is framed for it. So has to go on the run. And that's basically the story, is our guy Axeman, who's got a kind of hard man stage image, but actually is a real wimp, having to actually deal with real gangsters and real armies trying to kill him and real nastiness, and work out what he really is, what he's really for. So that was the story. And then I had my main character and I had my big first act turning point, which is walking in on the assassination. And that became the basis of the novel Play Me.
Awesome. So, um, some people say that writing humor is one of the most difficult things to get right. Have you ever found it difficult, or is that just your natural way?
I think partly is my natural way. I tend to see the funny side of things, but you've got to have the right story. At the moment, I'm writing something completely different. In fact, I've just finished a conspiracy thriller, and somebody said, would I want to put some humor in it? And I thought, well, actually, no, because it just doesn't fit. You need, essentially, it's the characters. It all comes down to characters. We got Axeman Flynn, who's this kind of hapless, you know, rock star trying to revive his career, who is deeply into any kind of, new agey thing he can think of. And his kind of manager stroke, runner stroke, roadie stroke, everything, called Mickey, who has gone to all the new age meetings and seminars and comes out with a stream of these quotes, like, sort of, your first day is the next day of your life and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Um, so I had great fun just making up a load of completely silly quotes, because I love that stuff too, but I also see the funny side of it. And I think you kind of got to both love it and see the funny side of it to do humor. If you just love it, then you obviously, you kind of, you're too close. But if all you want to do is kind of put the knife in, that you kind of loses the humanity of it.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I like to see the funny side. One of my greatest things is making someone laugh. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you definitely have to balance.
The danger is obviously getting that balance and getting the story to work at the same time as getting the humor to work, getting the characters to work, because there's a lot going on there. And it's very tempting to put things in just because they're funny. It's one thing. I mean, I admire Howard Jacobson. I think he's a great writer in some ways, but he really annoys me at times, because he will
Mm.
you'll get to a chapter which you think, well, there's strange things going on, which I don't believe the characters would do this at all. And right at the end of the character, you get a kind of a laugh line, and you think, that's it. That punchline was he completely ruined the characters purely in order to get a punchline in. And that is one of the dangers of humor.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it as well, and yeah, it is a shame because yeah, it takes you out, doesn't it? So
Yeah. On the other hand, I
I've
think you do have to have gags. You have to have things that people are going to smile and hopefully laugh at. I see too many. I keep on turning on sitcoms. My wife is amused. I always hope these new British sitcoms are going to be any good, and then they're often very interesting and their characters are interesting, but there's no actual jokes in it. And then you turn on something like good old Frasier or something like that, or Porridge, or the classics, and it's just they know how to make you laugh as well as all the other stuff.
yeah, Frasier's very clever, isn't it? It's one of my
Mm,
favorites, so I love Frasier,
yeah,
and probably one of the best sections of Frasier is with no dialogue whatsoever.
yeah.
Um, you probably know if you've seen it enough, you probably know what I mean, but
Um, I tend to catch bits of it when I'm on holiday and turn on the television, and invariably, whatever country you're in, at 9 o'clock in the morning, whatever language it's dubbed into, it's going to be Frasier.
yeah. No, there's a beginning of an episode where Niles is trying to iron and there's no dialogue whatsoever and it's
Mm,
absolutely hilarious and everybody mentions it because it's so
yeah.
brilliant and
Uh,
hilarious.
I
Yeah.
mean, that takes hard work doing that. I mean, I know having directed plays, it's no good. I mean, just having the humor on the page isn't good enough. You've got to have the actors who know the timing. Um, you've got to, sort of got the rehearsal. You've got to, that what looks like a light-hearted bit of something probably took hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of intrinsic, in tiny little detail research and practice and rehearse.
Yeah. Unless you're Robin Williams, I think, where he's just
Yeah.
naturally funny and they just recorded and cut out.
Yes. Well, the key thing is the cutting.
Yeah.
Because I'd be interesting to see what's on the cutting room floor in those sort of scenes.
I'm glad. I think ignorance is bliss in that situation. I'm glad I
Yes.
don't know. I've got to ask how you came up with the name because it's very cool.
Play me.
The name, your main character's name.
Oh, Axeman.
Yes.
Um, it was hard work actually because I originally called him Badass with a capital A in the middle, and I loved that name. Except I discovered quite early on there was an American, I think he's a hip hop artist called Badass, but with the two S's are dollar signs. Um, And I thought, I mean, this guy's not hip hop quite. I mean, he's actually, my guy X-Man has invented a genre called red metal, which is kind of a mixture of kind of gangster rap and politics and heavy metal.
Okay.
Um, and um, and I thought, I don't want to take the risk. So I then had to sit down and work out and went through all the possible names, and some of them were absolutely right, but just didn't work for the character, and some of them worked for the character, but just didn't sound right. Um, and then, of course, an axe, as you know, is slang in the business for a electric guitar. And that combined with his heavy metal, heavy, gangster kind of stage image, I thought that just fell into place. But it wasn't by no means the first name I came up with.
How do you go about choosing character names in general? I find it very difficult.
Um, Well, I'm partly inspired by Dickens because I think Dickens kind of frees you up to kind of all sorts of names. I think names it takes time. It and people often get the ages of names wrong. I was once I used to do quite a lot of teaching at film schools and film university courses, and I went to the London Film School with a little panel of us looking at these short scripts that had to be approved for the students to make. And I remember there was one which was about these 60-year-olds called Hilda and was it Hilda and um, Bill or something like that. I mean, names that, you know, would have possibly been right for 60-year-olds about 40 or 50 years ago. Um, and they were kind of doddery old people. And I pointed out that most of us in the panel were kind of getting to that age, and we'd grown up with the Beatles and the Stones and wore denim jeans and, did not have Zimmer frames. For students, anyone over 30 was just beyond, beyond old. Um, so I find it's very important to get the age and the age and the timing right, particularly if it's set in the past. And so I write down a lot of names. I mean, I don't quite go as far as, Simenon, who wrote the Maigret series. He would write first names and last names on manila envelopes and shuffle them around till he found two that worked. I find you can do the same thing now on a computer.
Yeah.
Um, but um, I will often look at, particularly if it's a particular kind of person, I'll look at um, Google. I'll see, for example, if it's someone, in their 20s, for example, I'll look up football teams, for example, and see what, or if they're highly qualified, I'll look up university names. And the same thing, you can go back in time. You can look up football teams from the 30s. At the moment, I'm writing a book set in the 40s, so I'm needing French and German names because it's partly it's a lot of it takes place in occupied France. So what would be a appropriate first name for a 30-year-old Frenchman in 1944? Who works as a farmer. And it's so, and then it's got to sound right. It's got to have a lot of names. I think good names have an essence of something. They have a bit something dark or a bit fun or a bit, So yeah, it's um, part of the early part of planning is getting all those names in place.
Yeah, I mean I don't plan, so mine just change all the way through. I had one woman in my first book that had about um 5 name changes, I think, until I finally settled on one that I
Yeah.
was happy with. Bless her. Poor woman had an identity crisis.
Yeah. No, I tend to plan a fair bit, and but inevitably you come across things and people you weren't expecting or hadn't thought very deeply about. And I do find that at that point I will just stop, get that person, because the danger otherwise I'll end up writing a cliche.
Yeah.
And I don't like cliches. I want, characters who are interesting and different. And, in comedy you are playing with cliches, but you don't want them to be cliches. You're playing with the, sort of the archetypes. I mean, Mickey, for example, the guy who's very into all the new agey seminars and things, the sidekick, who's a kind of Sancho Panza type character. Um, I wanted him. I mean, I know who partly who I modelled a part of him on, um, but I wanted him to be kind of one of these people who's constantly being beaten, hit, whatever happens, and he keeps bouncing up and says, I'm not really hurting." His coconut bounced off his head. He said, "No, yeah, it's just woke me up a bit." Um, and he's just a fun character to write because he's just you just know that every scene you can do something horrible to him. And so he had to be called Mickey. Mickey Slapstone is his name. And the slap bit, of course, was important.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, I in my second book, I've got foreign characters and I chose their names really carefully. Usually I'm just what sounds right, but actually I research what they meant, so that they mean something.
Mm,
So yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely it's such a big thing. Um, I was going to ask you, I think I've seen you talk about it in an interview before about going undercover to do research
Mm.
and talking your way into situations. So what's been the most fun experience and what's been the sort of, have you ever got into a sticky situation by doing that?
Well, sticky situation in Dominican Republic, was falling off a mountain. That was a little bit worrying at the time. I because we were filming coffee farmers, and there's one coffee farmer who's right in its village, miles from everywhere. I mean, so poor that we had to bring our own food for the family to share because there's no way they could. They when they put us up, there's no way they could have fed us. No electricity at all. Complete. I've never known a night so black. And then the next morning, we grab all the gear and we have to climb a mountain through wading through streams and up paths to where the coffee is grown, which is usually on the side on very steep slopes. So we go up and we're at the top of this very, very, very tall mountain, and um, and there's these coffee plants, and there's the family kind of dipping in and out quite happily on this sort of slope, which is basically 90 degrees, as if they're mountain goats. And there's my cameraman doing the same thing. And I thought, well, if the cameraman can do that, I can do it. So I step off onto nothing. You know those cartoons where they go like this and they're in midair, and you think, hang on a second, I don't want to be in midair anymore. So down I went, and going through quite a few coffee plants on the way. Luckily, one of them stopped me about halfway down because it could have been otherwise a very different ending to the story. But that taught me two things. It taught me not to do what the cameraman does. I'm the director. I can stay at the top and wave my arms around. But it also taught me a bit about risk and fear and danger, which actually fed into Axeman. And when he's going through all sorts of things and being shot at by rebels and armies and police and so forth, I think some of that fed in as well.
Yeah, that's cool. What about the most fun experience?
The most fun experience, well, being in Dominican Republic was fun actually. It's a lovely place and the people are lovely. And I mean, I think I've done other things. I mean, for my second book, I managed to wangle myself into a police cell because I wanted to know what it was like to be locked up. And for the first one, talked my way into um, newspaper offices because they were very, very wary. It surprised me. I thought, newspapers, there'd be no problem getting in there. And in the end, I think one of the ones I got into the Daily Mirror largely because I remembered having gone in as a schoolboy. We had a school trip years and years and years ago, and I was fascinated by the machinery then. And this is so long ago. They had a machine there that I'd never seen before, which you could take a photograph of the other side of the world, and it would essentially print it onto a piece of photographic film. There's this drum that went round and round very, very slowly, um, in real time from wherever it was in the world down the phone lines. And this was long before fax machines. Although, did you know, interesting and totally non-useful fact of the day is fax machines were invented in the 18th century. In the first fax machine, Louis XIV had a fax machine that linked up his palace in Lyon with his palace in Versailles. And it was
Oh, wow.
basically a kind of pendulum that swung and created a picture. Obviously, not a photograph in those days, but it would create the picture that was at the other end. Um, so yes, that was fun. And then another, I can't even say what the newspaper was because I got in there very, very against the rules. I got into the newsroom through a contact and had to pretend to be someone completely different because I wanted to see, how the tabloids really worked, and that was very important for the breaking of Liam Glass.
That's so cool. I can talk on my feet, but I don't know if I'd be good enough to talk my way into somewhere. I don't think I would. I'd blush, I think, as well. I'm terrible.
Um, I find it's interesting. It's like mothers and babies. You do all sorts of things for your little children, in this case, my books, that you'd never do for anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, at a book festival that I was hosting, I did dress up in a wig and a thing to be a judge. So yeah, which I definitely wouldn't normally do.
No, I would hope not.
No, it's definitely not a hat face, not a wig face either. Definitely not my style. This is why I didn't go into law, and because I'm not clever enough, don't think.
You can't wear the wigs.
Yeah, and they're hot and itchy, like ugh. What did it feel like being locked in a cell? Was it more real? Or did you know all along, in the background that it wasn't for real? So,
Well, I knew I was going to be let out. It's actually it sounds quite interesting because what I didn't realize is that you lie on your bunk and you look up, and there's stuff written on the ceiling warning you not to, basically not to commit suicide. No, don't, giving you kind of not quite new agey, but sort of helpful comments about, psychiatric help is available if you want it, kind of thing. Stenciled on the ceiling, which who knew?
Yeah, they don't show that on 24 hours in police
No,
custody.
no, they never look up.
That's set in my local police station. Well, I'd say local-ish in my area. So I have known places, not people yet, I don't think. So if anyone wants to know about where I'm from, I'm just like, watch 24 hours in police custody. It's all it's all there for you.
That's your life, is it? For
Well,
your friends.
not my life, no.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't known anyone yet, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time.
As long as it's not you.
Yeah. I'm a good girl or good at hiding or not getting caught anyway.
I think
Eh,
alcohol seems to be behind a lot of it from what I've seen. Um, Particularly if you watch, I mean, Ambulance too.
oh
Nine
yeah.
times out of 10, the phone call involves alcohol of some kind or other.
Yeah. Um, have you ever had to dramatically change a story when you've gone undercover and learned something?
Um, Not dramatically. You fill things out and you think, obviously, you find certain things won't necessarily work, so you have to change them. It's difficult to remember now because I find I can only remember how it ended up, not what it was before. Even when I come across deleted scenes, it surprises me. So, not really. I mean, because most of the questions I would have had, I probably would have answered about the plot by that stage. I tend to leave those kind of bits of research quite late.
Okay.
Um, I mean, the Dominican Republic is a different issue because there I didn't have a proper plot and I had to work on the plot, and it was more that I actually had to throw out some ideas. Or I did change one character fairly dramatically because he was modelled partly on somebody I who was actually driving us around. Um, and he became, in the long run, a kind of Milo Mindermender type character in Play Me, as sort of a um, guy who's desperate to get to what he calls the West or the North or to the rich countries and get out. And he's studying um, a business degree. He's about 19, I think, but he's studying a business degree in Harvard online. Only it's Harvard with two V's, and he thinks that might be slightly different, but it's still very good. He keeps quoting it. And he works his way through the book from very small beginnings to running quite a large corporation. Um, Still about 19 years old. He's quite a fun character, and he didn't so much get changed by the um, research, but he did get inspired by the research to a certain extent. That plus I love Catch 22.
Do you ever worry about being political, especially with the crazy world that we're in now?
I worry about not being political enough. I think in this crazy world, we have a duty to be political. I think we have to speak out. So, um, yes, I mean, there's a lot of politics, but I tend to tuck it away in the humor, so that it doesn't read as a political tract. But there's one kind of extended joke about first past the post, kind of voting, where there actually is this post in the rebel camp, which they have to get to first to get voted. So I thought, I mean, because first past post is such a ridiculous system, you'd never choose it. If you seriously wanted to set up a democratic system, that's the last thing you'd choose. And we seem to be hanging on to it for grim death at the moment, for
Yeah.
no good reason. Labour Party keeps saying we're going to get rid of it, we're going to have proportional representation, and then they get into power and think, oh no, well maybe we won't, because they have this kind of illusion they'll always win massively, and then they don't, and then they realise they haven't, so they say, oh, we'll get rid of first past the post, and they get back into power and think, oh no, no, actually we won that time, didn't we?
Yeah, bless them. They're very delusional, all of them.
Yes, yeah.
It's quite worrying, really, but hey.
Well, I'm an avid and very committed Green Party person, so it may be delusional, but at least it's green delusions.
Yeah.
Somebody came up to me, an arch Tory friend of mine, and said, "How can you possibly support this Zach Belansky? Because he's just in dreamland." And you know how you think of the right answer about 24 hours later?
Yeah.
The French call it l'esprit d'escalier, or sort of the spirit of the staircase. It's like you're on the stairs leaving when you realise what you should have said. And I realised what I should have said was it was better than the nightmare we've been living through the last 20 years.
I mean, I kind of feel sorry for the kids that have got to study this period in future because how on
Oh, I think
earth,
they'll have great fun. Assuming there are any kids and there isn't any studying there,
well,
and they're not just sitting, in sort of air conditioned huts somewhere where they can switch on the air conditioning for half an hour because it's the only electricity they can afford. I think it'll be a tremendous be
mm,
like, I mean, one of my favorite periods of time is the English Civil War because so much interesting things happened and so much that actually started off what happened. Some of the things happened today. Um, I think there's some, I think it'd be a fascinating period to study. I mean, if they could stop laughing.
yeah, well, quite. I mean, I don't know how I'd explain this to the next generation, having lived through it. I'm like, I don't even know where to begin.
Don't even try. Just write a comedy novel about it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I could do it justice. I'll just keep writing horrible crime novels and
Well,
tackling it.
that also works. You know that basically gangster movies in the States came out of in the 30s from essentially initially left wing, but it went across the board. Film writers and directors wanted to actually talk about what was going on in corporate business, but they couldn't. I mean, Hollywood wouldn't let them come out overtly say the awful things that the corporations were doing. So they essentially did them as gangster movies. Those gangsters, if you look at them, the sort of White Heat and the James Cagney type characters, they're corporations.
Mm, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
So nasty gangster stories, crime stories, yeah, it's a good way. Who was it? I can never remember their exact name. Per Wall, the Swedish couple, sadly deceased now, who set out to write Swedish crime stories to show what the Swedish system was like at the time. And they wrote 10. Brilliant, very good. I mean, I forget the name of their main character who's now, I mean, they've now done about 50 episodes on TV. But yeah, was it Wallander? No, Wallander was a different writer.
Yeah, I know what you mean, I think, but I'm not going to be able to think of it off the cuff. I've heard it at quizzes, at festivals,
Yeah.
and I can't. Yeah, but I do know what you mean. Yeah, I like writing the dark stuff. I like twisting it a little bit as well, so
Mm.
it's not the normal. I had male domestic violence in my last book because you
Mm.
don't read that very often.
No,
Does
no.
my books do make it look like I hate men a little bit, which I don't, but they don't do very well.
for
Mhm.
some kinds of men.
Yeah. Yeah, all the men deserve it. Well, the guy that had domestic violence didn't really deserve it, but it was for the
I
story.
I did a film for a charity once, a kind of talking heads type film about domestic violence, and we had seven characters based on real life, but essentially fictional and acted, um, who had different experiences of domestic violence, and two of them were male. One was a small boy who'd watched his parents, and one was a man now who'd actually experienced domestic violence and was still trying to deal with the trauma of it.
Well, yeah, but that was powerful and quite
Mm.
tough.
Yeah, interesting film to make though.
Yeah, I bet. That's the trouble. The most interesting are the ones where, unfortunately it is, isn't it? All the hardest
Mm.
things to go through.
Well, they say that the best writers
Mm.
are horrible people who put their characters through the worst kind of situations.
Yeah,
But I think the corollary is you have to take your worst parts and use them. You can't hide. You can't pretend to be a nice person. You have to draw on all the nasty parts and the nasty memories and experiences. And um, that's not easy. It's
no.
much easier just to trot out some cozy crime.
Yeah, indeed. I was worried when my first book came out. I'd only just started at my job. I think I'd been there about 4 weeks. Either my CEO or my COO bought one. And I'm thinking, you don't know me yet. And this is quite a dark book, and men don't do very well. And I'd rather you didn't read it just yet because, you wonder who the hell you've employed. I don't believe he has even now, so that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Good.
Yeah. Kind of a random question. If anyone was starting out, would you recommend that they do screenwriting or novel writing?
Novel writing. I mean,
Okay.
screenwriting is a
Mm,
great training for structure, but it is the hardest kind of writing there is, without a doubt. There's nowhere to hide. You've essentially got 99 pages of mostly white space.
yeah,
You can't suddenly go off into a little purple prose riff or a nice little description of the local pub or anything like that. Um, it is, non-stop.
mm,
What's there on the page is the tip of the iceberg that the rest have to make into a film or TV series. And it is, I say it's like writing 99 pages of haiku.
yeah, that
Every
was.
word, every syllable has to count. I'm not saying novel writing is easy because
No.
you have to get the structure, but everything else as well. You essentially what I had to learn moving from screenwriting to novel writing was that I had to do all the parts, all the crew, everything. So while on the one hand I got rid of the producer and the money men and I didn't have to worry about that side of things, I had to be the makeup artist, I had to be the set designer, I had to be the characters, the actors, as well as the director. And that's quite hard work too. So there's no easy answers, but I
No.
would start with novel writing. I might be tempted to say start with playwriting because
Okay.
the great thing about plays is there's a lot of demand. You may not necessarily get a big West End or Broadway production, but there's a lot of pub theatres and small and even amateur drama groups where you can hear your stuff back. And I always say that one small fringe production of, say, 3 weeks of rehearsal and 9 performances is probably equivalent in experience to writing three novels or watching or making three feature films because you get the actors turning around and saying, well, what do I mean here? What's going on here? And you hear stuff and you think, oh, that scene doesn't, maybe I could make that scene better. You know, and then you hear it in front of an audience and you realize again it's completely different from what you thought. And the laughs come where you weren't expecting. And the audience is, you know, silent, agape, maybe when you weren't expecting or not, if you thought they were going to be. So, yeah, I mean, it fundamentally comes down also to what it is you prefer to read, and prefer to go to. If you like going to plays and write plays, if you do read lots of novels, then write novels or maybe short stories to start with. Most screen people who go into screenwriting have read very few screenplays. And if you think how many screenplays someone's probably read compared to how many novels and poems and everything else. So if you do go into screenwriting, you've just got to read a lot and you've got to get hold of as many possible screenplays as you possibly can. It's a little bit easier now with the internet. When I first started, you had to buy them or cadge them off somebody and they were quite expensive. Now there's whole websites where you can download, loads. Not always every genre. Depends on which genres the internet tends to like. So you're getting a lot of science fiction, for example.
But do you know, I've never thought of looking for to read a screenplay. It literally never crossed my mind. But imagine that even just as a reader and a writer to read, to the structure and everything must be really interesting. I might have to just do that for
They are
reading.
fascinating. And I can tell you that
Mm, mm,
good screenplays are an absolute joy to read, and you can read them virtually in real
mm.
time. You know, bad screenplays, you have to prop your eyelids open with matchsticks. I mean, they are so awful. And if you've got to read them for some reason, if you're editing or whatever, um, then it is hard work.
I
I think
mean,
one of the problems in this country is I think producers don't have enough screenplay experience, and I think screenwriters don't read enough bad screenplays, so they don't know how bad necessarily you can get or how bad they might get. Producers don't read enough good screenplays; they just get all the ones they're sent, and they've no idea how good a screenplay could be.
yeah, that doesn't sound like a great combo.
You know, we do have a development. We've always had a development industry issue here in this country, and it's getting that way, unfortunately, in publishing and books too. Risk averse. I mean, publishers, you who used to develop people's careers, you got to kind of hit the jackpot on the first few weeks of production. Otherwise, no one cares. No one's going to push it in marketing. Um, it's an issue at the Society of Authors. We're working on hard. As I didn't mention, I'm also a director of the Society of Authors, and we are very concerned that the way publishing is going at the moment.
Yeah, it does. I mean, as an author and an indie author, it's really tough. And it was interesting. I went to an event at a library last week, and the librarians both said that what people come in and borrow is absolutely nothing to what the publishers seem to think that we want to read. So they're assuming that we want romantasy. It's all the new big thing. And
Mm,
actually, people come in and they borrow crime,
mm,
but they're not giving the money to
yeah,
crime,
yeah,
because they're
interesting.
assuming a lot on our behalf, which really irritates me anyway. So yeah, I know what 2 years ahead at least of their
Yeah,
buying of books and stuff. So more more sexy dragons or whatever the
yeah.
saying is.
Well, I mean, as I also write, I mean, everything I do is in some way crime related, whether it's comedy crime, political crime, or serious psychological crime. Um, I think crime is a great genre, and it gives you opportunities, as you were saying earlier, to do so many things. It's such a good entry point into society.
I think it's a good way to explore what scares you as well and kind of deal with
Mm,
it or give it a different spin maybe, because I mean, particularly as a woman, I think at the moment it's quite scary. So it's quite
mm.
nice to be able to write a book where men suffer. Not
Yes.
necessarily the case in real life, but at least it makes us feel like we've got some control.
Well, I also, as you may not remember, I teach a martial art. So I see it from the other side as well. People come to me to be taught how not to be scared and how to deal with things. And often it's very simple things. It's not, I mean, it can be simple as how you go around, your alertness, your posture. They did some interesting research in an American prison years and years ago. They got some muggers together and they showed them videos of people walking down the street and said, which one would you mug? And they all chose the same people. And they're all people who had bad posture, bad alignment, lack of alertness. And that's stuff you can learn in a martial art quite easily or elsewhere,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah, I work for a security company and we do our the SIA license, and part of
Mm,
that is physical intervention and and stuff like that. So I'd know how to protect myself. So I've asked
mm.
to be taught, which eventually when I have time. But at least then
Yeah,
I'd know.
important. I think everyone should do something.
Yeah, I mean I'd love to learn a martial art.
Mm.
I don't think there's anything in my area. I'll have to find out actually. I don't.
There's bound to be. There's always
Yeah.
something somewhere.
Mm.
There's an amazing number of little dojos around the place doing different martial arts.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list. I have a bucket list and it's on my bucket
Mm.
list, so I shall have to do it.
It's good fun too, and that's the important thing. It's a great way of spending an evening.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Yeah, another thing. I didn't expect to be coming away with this with like homework.
Yes, this is your homework.
Um, are you, we spoke briefly before about capital crime. Are you attending any other festivals over the summer?
Um, I was looking, I don't know if I've missed it. Beaconsfield is around now. It's only a little
Yeah,
one,
I'm
but
not
it's
sure about that
not a
one.
bad drive from here. And I really do, I keep on wanting to go up to Theagstons, Harrogate.
Yeah.
And I've never made it yet. But are you going to be there?
Yes, I wouldn't miss it.
Yes. I mean, I keep on looking at the website to find out what's going on, and they never say. So that was kind of slightly off-putting. But I've got to try and work out whether to go, whether I can manage to go for a day, or whether I can stay overnight and just do 2 days, or at least 2 half days or something, because it's quite a
Yeah,
distance.
yeah, it's pretty intense.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll
But
be there.
yes.
I'll be there from the Thursday all the way to the Sunday. Like I'm full on.
They don't seem to have sadly revived Bristol, which they were hoping to do.
I think they always said they were going to leave a year. So
Did
I
they?
think,
All right.
yes, I think next year we might hear
Well,
something.
fingers crossed, because
I
that was a
hope so.
lovely that was a
Yeah,
lovely festival. And the one my favorite by far.
yeah. Yeah, I really missed it this year. Wasn't expecting to, and it really left a
Mm.
hole.
Yeah.
Well, I can't think of any more questions unless you think there's anything really obvious I haven't asked you that you want to tell us.
Only how to contact me. Um,
Yes, please.
so and how to get some freebies. You can get I've got a award-nominated book of short stories called The Cupboard with a novella attached, which you can get for free. And you can either go to my website or direct to the site. So direct to the site is called The Cupboard. So thecupboard.info will get you there. It's free for anyone who joins my mailing list. You can, if you want to, unsubscribe at any point. Though I hope you'll stay because I write reviews of books I love, films I love, and occasionally odd other things, politics and other stuff that I feel is entertaining and interesting and worth talking about. And occasionally I get guest bloggers coming along. Um, but I don't get lots of other people coming in and buying advertising. It's all very well. You're protected from that sort of thing. And I generally do about one thing, unless I've got a book coming out, but one thing a month. So it's not inundated. So thecupboard.info, or just go to my website, www.charles-harris.co.uk. And there's some other free books as well and other fascinatingly interesting things there, including I put up for the first time a carousel of my photographs. So I quite enjoyed doing some photographs. So
Yeah, I shall have to
just
check them out as
just
well.
just
More
had my
homework.
website revised. The really lovely woman who's completely redone it, and I think she's done tremendously.
Wow.
So yes, thecupboard.info or charles-harris.co.uk, and it'd be great to see anybody who wants to kind of come along and say hi and send an email and just tell me what they enjoy.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I highly recommend as a subscriber of your email. I enjoy it.
Thank you. And then of course there's Play Me, which you can get on, itself, which is I shall wave from the camera again, um, is available from any good bookshop. Oh, that's interesting. It's automatically zooming. I didn't know it did that.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Um, yes, you can order it from any good bookshop around the world or just about any Amazon store at a very reasonable price.
And will you have any with you at Capital Crime in case anyone wants a signed copy?
That's a good idea, actually. I should do, yes. I shall bring a few. I shall make a note immediately to bring a few on
Fabulous.
Friday.
I
Coming up
may
very
relieve
close.
you of one
Yes.
of those on Friday then.
Yes, definitely.
Fab. Brilliant. Well,
Definitely.
thank you very much. It's been
Thank you,
an
Donna.
absolute pleasure as always. And I shall look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Look forward to seeing you. Cheers.